Salutations. This is perhaps the last time we'll ever have vaguely a host for this fucking show. Uh, as you can see, this is a low effort episode. I have two special people here. One is my best friend, Charles Carlisle. I call him Mikey. And the other, real degenerate. Oh, man. Jonathan. What's up, buddy?
How's it going, Michael?
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. Oh my god.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Anyways, so they're gonna be talking about the death penalty, right? So Jonathan is like nah, death penalty's nah, and like Mikey's like yeah, death penalty
Only
yeah.
if the state is doing it.
But first, let's get into the intro. Oh, salutations! Welcome back. As you can see, I'm doing a bit. I'm really bad at this. Mikey, or as people call him, Charles Carlisle. He will be on pro kill the people. Jonathan will be pro don't kill the rabid dogs. Anyways, as you can see, I am unbiased. I will be spectating this bloodbath, this blood sport. Gentlemen, begin!
I think that's what you call biased against both sides.
I think so. I think so.
I feel like there's
This
just
is a
no
really
winner.
good start. I hope this is the
yeah.
one we keep.
Dude,
This is what we will keep.
All the clothes I own for this.
Did you?
All of them.
This is actually laundry day for me.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's why I look so sexy.
I do not wash clothes.
How long is this bit gonna go for?
For the duration of this episode.
We could just shit on him the whole time.
Oh, nothing will change.
Okay.
Oh,
That's what he asked for. So I mean, I figured I'd
But
oblige.
yeah, no. So you guys, this is something that you guys been wanting to do, right, for a while. Talk about a certain topic in front of the camera.
No, Jacob kidnapped me, and now I'm here.
That's fine. But yeah, no. So who would like to start us off?
I'll start. I don't mind.
Go for it.
So yeah, because I feel like generally speaking, I'm the different one of our friend group. This is kind of how I am describing myself: is that I'm the only person in the friend group, basically, who's like very vehemently against the death penalty, and I feel like I have some pretty good positions and reasoning for it. But to give you a really simple sort of like pillar of my argument, I don't believe that the government has the right to kill you if you are not at present a threat to anybody's life. That's my like big guiding philosophy. So
okay, I can understand that, and I mean, for the most part, I understand and somewhat agree with a lot of the arguments against the death penalty, but I think that there's still a utility there that it's a little bit hard to put into like objective terms, but it has persisted through all of humanity for, in my opinion, a good reason. And I think it's worth exploring that in this.
that's not your only reason that you believe in it, though, just because
No.
it's been around for a while.
No. I personally agree with kind of the core reasoning behind it, just in terms of what it really stands for, retribution.
Okay.
I think it's a more efficient way of dealing out justice to somebody who otherwise we have no faith in them being able to reform. And honestly, I think it's actually more practical than some of the other alternatives, like keeping somebody in prison for life without parole.
Okay.
I can expand on that, or we can.
Yeah, I would definitely like you to expand on that because I don't know exactly how are you measuring practicality?
So I guess the problem that I have, particularly with life without parole, which I think is generally the alternative to the death penalty. Right?
Yeah. Just to be super clear, that would, in every death penalty case that we have, like everybody that's on death row at the moment, barring of course where we find exculpatory evidence for the defendant, right, to where we prove them innocent. Aside from those cases, obviously I'd prefer those people be released. But everybody that's on death row, I would far prefer them just be in prison and life without parole. And of course, I don't believe that for nothing. That is structured on a couple of different reasonings. But just your measure of practicality, I'm really interested in.
Yeah, so I guess I don't understand really exactly what the point of putting somebody in life without parole is, besides, I mean, something akin to torture. I mean, it's still retribution. Like otherwise,
sort of.
Otherwise, we'd give them the chance to get out eventually. But we're just saying you're going to be locked in a cage for the rest of your life, and then you're going to die.
Yes.
Anyways.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I mean, really, if the goal is just to lock them in a little room, make them like sulk on, or like think on what they did the rest of their life, and then die, I don't really know what the point is other than the enjoyment of everybody else, I guess, knowing that they're never going to get out.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. So under our current, not legal framework, but the way that we have structured the death penalty up to this point, keeping them in prison, life without parole, is upwards of 50% cheaper than killing them. Okay. And I believe it's somewhere at like 85 to 90% of the cost of killing somebody is in the appeals process. In some states, there are up to 12 levels of appeals, and that's where all the cost comes from. Not only that, but also having that buffer time, upwards of 2 decades, that somebody can remain in prison until they're killed. All of that lends time for exculpatory evidence, like I was talking about a moment ago, exculpatory evidence to be discovered and for innocent people to be released. The other reason that I don't think that killing them, at all, regardless of whether or not it's a decade, 2 decades, or however long, but I think that somebody suffers more whenever they're in prison forever until they die. The way that I view it anyway, and of course if you're coming from a Christian worldview, there's reasonable minds can disagree on this particular argument, especially if you're coming from a Christian worldview. But one of my things with that is I think somebody suffers more whenever they're having to suffer life without parole, because if we kill them, it's just kind of a get out of jail free card.
So the goal is to make them suffer? Is that the...
No, it's not the only goal, but it's what we have right now, to where we're not just killing them right now. Again, and reminder, all of this is on top of I don't believe that the government should have the right to kill you if you're not at present a threat to anybody's life. That's like the load bearing argument.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, so I want to, because you brought up the cost thing first. And the cost, there's no disputing it. It is far more expensive to kill somebody than it is to lock them away in life. And it is, a lot of it's trial and appeals and things like that. The thing is, though, what's interesting is there's a higher rate of exoneration on death row than there is life without parole. And that's because of the amount of appeals that go into death row sentences and the lack of opportunity to prove innocence whenever you're locked up life without parole. So
where are you pulling that data from? Because I found data that was the opposite.
Really?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I actually have it right.
Because new evidence can come to light all the time. Now, I don't know exactly to the degree that appeals processes discover evidence, or if it's like investigators or defense attorneys pulling up evidence for it. Because appeals processes, as I understand it, appeals processes are only finding out if the lower courts, the way that they ruled was correct, if they were like legally within their rights to do what they did, like both attorneys, the prosecution and the defense, and the judges and the juries. If the process was correct, that's what the appeals process is like supposed to discover. It's not supposed to say, hey, this person is actually innocent because we found new evidence. It's actually, hey, were the lower courts doing what they were supposed to do? That's as I understand it. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case.
So So I mean, a lot of issue that that people have with death penalty is that there's no opportunity to go back on it. But because of the length of time that they're usually on death row, it gives the opportunity for technological advancement.
Post execution is
Not
what.
necessarily.
No, once you die, there's no going back.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. That's kind of
No,
the
I know. So
implication.
that's like a minor. That's a minor part. Well, I mean, really, it's a pretty big part. But yeah, once you die, it's like that's it.
No, but what I'm saying is that in that time that you're constantly appealing your case while you're on death row, that's the opportunity that people in prison for life without parole don't get. The whole point of not having parole is so that victims' families don't have to keep on getting dragged into parole hearings and things like that.
Well, if you're sentenced to life without parole, you wouldn't have parole hearings.
Exactly.
So I'm
It
confused.
limits the opportunity for that person to present exonerating evidence.
But-
However,
but cases can be reopened, right? So let's say that I'm convicted of a crime for whatever the crime is, and I'm in prison, life without parole, and I have exhausted all of my appeals that I can submit, and then concrete 100% proof, like evidence, is found that I did not commit the crime, that in fact somebody else did. Would I just be stuck in prison, or would I have an opportunity to get out?
so typically there's only 3 ways of escaping life without parole sentence, and that would be through appeals, through clemency, and then I had it. I'm sorry.
Death.
Well,
That would be a way to get out of
it
it.
would be a way to get out of it. That's
Yeah.
true. I mean, it is the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, but at least you have time to be able to find new evidence.
Fair. Well,
right?
yeah,
and the government isn't just saying, "Hey, you're dead."
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is that whenever you're so this is the data I had about inmates on death row
Okay.
having higher rates of release than inmates with sentenced to life without parole.
Okay.
And you're welcome to. I know I'm just kind of throwing it at you.
No, it's
I
fine.
found it today.
Nice.
Essentially, it's the constant process of having to reanalyze and reevaluate all of the evidence in the case. Sometimes you're holding new trials, and yeah, the victims' families are getting brought in for all of this, but it is constantly being scrutinized to make sure that they catch as many innocent people as they can before they're put to death. So that's why.
How do we know that innocent people don't still fall through the cracks? That's another completely different argument. Is we don't, for a lot of, like Nicholas Cruz, right? Nicholas Cruz in Florida, I believe was convicted of the crimes that he committed, the Parkland shooting.
Yeah.
And then I want to say it was a 10 to 12 decision to execute him. But in the state of Florida, it has to be all 12.
Right.
And so he was spared the death penalty. And we knew with beyond a shadow of a doubt, it was not even a question that he did it, right? And the people of Florida, the jury, still decided to not execute him. So that's another. This is sort of just something that I'm thinking of right now. What is the point of the death penalty if people like Nicholas Cruz don't get executed? Why do we even have it?
That's why we have juries. Is the point? I mean, it's why a judge can't just say I'm imposing the death sentence. We have juries to try and separate the raw emotional feelings of victims' families who want that retribution, while trying to get as general of a societal feel on what this person deserves as possible by pulling 12 random people from that area that they committed the crime, and then all 12 of them have to agree. They have to all come to a consensus on it.
So would you not agree? Oh God, I hate that phrase. I'm so sorry. But do you not think that regardless of how many appeals somebody does or the fact that it's a jury that votes to do it, do you not think that sending somebody to death is inherently an emotional act? Do you not
No,
think
I would
Okay.
say yeah, sure, it is, but it's
hey, this terrible person did X, Y, and Z. They deserve to die.
it's also based on an evaluation of how that person's local society feels crimes should be handled by that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so first of all, I want to kind of move back on this real quick. I think that if it is true that inmates sentenced to life without parole, that more of innocent people are being held their entire lives in prison and then they die without ever being exonerated, is equally as bad, and that doesn't seem to be something that concerns people as much as death sentence, even though it happens.
So I only was able to glance at the abstract, but it seems to be that the number is about 4%.
Mm-hmm.
So 4% of people that theoretically, again, I'm not sure exactly. I would need to look into the study more, but theoretically, 4% of the people that are in prison, life without parole, would be exonerated if they were given the death penalty and were on death row. Is that what the study essentially says?
Based on and again, it's I haven't seen any conflicting data on it.
Sure.
Based on that one, it's 4% of death row inmates are being exonerated, and fewer percentage of that would be life without parole inmates being released. Exonerated.
Does the study say what the number is, the difference? So like if death row is 4% of death row inmates are being exonerated, do you know what the percentage is for life without parole inmates?
I don't know exactly what it is. If
it's like 3.8, I don't understand. I don't know if it's 3.8. I'm pulling a number out of a hat. It could be 0, but I don't think that it is. But the study for sure says that it's more than death row inmates. Man, I wish I had time to...
we definitely, and I don't really even need to rely on it in order to kind of make the point. My point is that it seems like the alternative, life without parole, is as comfortable for you as death sentences for me, except that the issue that you have with death sentence of people who are wrongfully convicted being killed, there's the same result with false convictions without parole.
Have you heard the like psychological thing where whenever you lose $5, it's worse than gaining $5? Have you heard that?
Sure.
Where we have more of a visceral reaction to loss than to gain, even of the same proportion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the death penalty is very similar to that. Wherein like how negatively do you view life without parole? How much do you disdain that?
I just, it's not so much a disdain. I mean, I'm for killing people,
which is a really weird thing to be for.
What I'm saying is that I don't get why there's that much of a distinction between it. You're sentencing the person to stay in a cell until they're dead.
Yes, but you're not killing them. That's the big distinction. And I know
you're trying to limit their life to the and this is also another weird part, is that you're like, if the point is to make them, I guess, suffer, or to
it's to make them suffer is a really strong word, but it's to make them suffer as much as they can with their time on Earth. And I'm not comfortable. Number one, I'm not comfortable with giving them what I view as a get out of jail free card. Number one, but number two, I'm not fine with them sucking up more taxpayer dollars with us trying to, the way that I view it, just commit a very emotional act where it's like, oh, this person disgusts me, I don't want them around anymore. I don't think that they deserve to be on this same plane of existence. And even from a Christian perspective, which I'm not arguing from, I'm just saying that you can take this argument. Your life is the most valuable thing that God has ever given you, right? So I don't know to the degree that human beings should have the right or the ability to just decide, even by a 12-person vote and a bunch of appeals processes, etc. I don't know to the degree that human beings should have the right to kill each other. And especially with what you said earlier, where it's like, well, this has been around for, and I'm not saying that this is your main argument, but I think it's more of a mark of an uncivilized society that we can just decide to kill people we don't like than to say, hey, we're above this. We have the means to where we can just we can separate you from society, but we're not just going to kill you. You're going to live out the rest of your days, and you may never see the sun again, but you're going to die here, and we're not going to kill you. We're not going to be the ones to pull the trigger or to inject the serum or to electrocute you. We're not going to do that because we're more of a civilized society.
So what exactly is how far do you go then to make them suffer or feel the consequences of it? Like, you lock them in a room, you give
Mhm.
them TV,
Mhm.
you give them outside privileges, gym equipment. Like how far
They
do we
would
go?
they would
Or-
probably have the bare necessities. Now I'm still not in I'm not in favor of torture. Okay.
right.
Which is the Fifth or Sixth Amendment, something like that. Maybe the Eighth Amendment.
I think it's yeah.
I should know that, but I don't off the top of my
See,
head.
I don't care. I just,
well, clearly, no, but I would give them the bare necessities,
Yeah.
and I think I want to say for maximum security, and whenever you are, crap, I forget what it's called whenever you're locked in a room by yourself.
isolation.
Yeah, no, there's a term for it.
Solitary.
Yes, solitary confinement. I believe even if you're in solitary, you're given 1 hour of outside time per day, and
yeah.
that's it. Now, I don't like the idea of solitary confinement, except for like the worst cases. But even then, even people like child rapists or people like Nicholas Cruz or like some of the dregs of society, even then, I don't think that we should kill them. Even of the worst among us, I don't think that the government. I don't think that the government should have the right to just kill people that are not currently a threat to anybody's life.
What about locking them in a cage with other people who might kill them?
At that point, it sounds kind of like a cop-out argument, but prisoners do what prisoners do. That's one part of the jail system that humanity or that the United States hasn't figured out yet. Is like, unless we're going to separate everybody and everybody's in solitary confinement, people are going to kill each other. So like I don't view very negatively the deaths of like Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy.
Right.
I don't view those very terribly. It's like, yeah, they're prisoners and prisoners are going to kill each other. But I don't think that the state should sponsor somebody's death. I think that that's morally bankrupt.
So to get to the core of what I generally would view as justification for the death penalty,
Mm-hmm.
it would be in cases of people who were helpless to defend themselves, and so in a situation where maybe the person would have died in a self-defense situation,
Mhm.
like an attacker, I mean, you could think of any general self-defense situation.
Sure.
Somebody attacks somebody, they get shot,
Yeah.
and they die, and we
Uh-huh.
justify that. But then you have situations where people attack people who are completely helpless to defend themselves, kids,
Children. Yeah, children.
elderly,
Do you count non-humans?
wheelchair. No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no.
So if I'm serially killing dogs, I wouldn't get the death penalty.
You might have bigger problems than that one. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how kindly that's taken to.
Yeah, no, I'd
Yeah.
fucking
prison.
kill you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
fair.
But I would completely view that as justification to kill somebody after the fact.
Mhm.
After the harm has been done, there's no going back to it. But in any other, like if the person had picked any other target, it would have been closer to that opportunity for somebody to actually
Mhm.
fight back in the moment. But they
Mhm.
they had picked a target who could not defend themselves
Mhm.
because they knew that they had zero chance of dying.
That would be your bar for the death penalty.
Generally, yeah. I
Okay.
think that would have to be a qualifier, first of all.
So okay, wait. So if I killed somebody in just a random mugging,
Mhm.
right, and they happened to die, it wasn't even like a first degree murder. It was like a second degree murder. Would I be eligible for the death penalty under your framework?
I see, and that's where it gets kind of hairy. Personally, I don't really think so.
Because it wasn't pre-planned, or why?
So impulse would definitely be a factor. It's so pre-planned or at least the opportunity to consider the risk. Like if somebody is in a store and sees a kid unattended,
Mhm.
impulse goes out the door for that one. They were looking for a target already that was vulnerable,
Mhm.
and they acted on it. To me, that's some level of pre-planning or
Mhm.
consideration of the circumstance. It wasn't just impulse.
Mhm.
It wasn't pure impulse. So yeah, I mean, robbery, that sort of thing. It's. I think that's one of those situations where you could handle that with a life sentence or something like that.
Mhm.
Another factor would definitely have to be some kind of objective primary evidence, video or something literally proving that the person.
So there's there's like shadow of a doubt this person did what we think they did.
Yeah,
what we know they did.
And I've seen arguments about like AI generated video and all that kind of stuff. You can trace that. All you have to do is find the.
You
primary.
can probably look in the metadata of the pictures or audio or video footage.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's AI isn't just some magical technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's got coding and everything that goes behind it.
What's the lowest crime that I could commit? What's the lowest offense that I could commit that would make me eligible for the death penalty under your framework? And as an aside question, if I were to get the death penalty, would you have basically the same structures in place that we do now? From when I'm convicted to when I actually am executed?
Sure. Yeah. I have no issue with the cost actually. Because in my opinion, if you were to remove the death penalty, now you'd place that burden on other inmates who are convicted to life without parole. Because now, again, it goes back to the whole argument of if you're limiting people's ability to appeal purely because you don't want them to have the opportunity. Like the whole thing of parole is the person's ability to petition to get out of jail.
Sure.
And
but if evidence is found, they can have a representative petition a court.
It's got to be a certain level of evidence. Whereas like death row, everything is considered. Any new thing, or if they want to request some kind of evidence to be examined, anything like that, they can appeal to have it done, and it's done. I don't think that same kind of benefit is afforded to somebody who's convicted life without parole. Like if they're they just think, oh wait, there was this like piece of clothing from that somehow might be involved with this one. I actually want to request DNA sampling on that, and that's not something that I don't think has to be granted. Whereas it would be with death row.
Would an inmate have to request that the court DNA sample it, or could they just have a lawyer working on the outside do DNA testing and then find the results of that and present that evidence to a court? Would an inmate have to petition a court for that?
If they have the means to get a lawyer to go through all that.
There are organizations that work pro bono specifically for people that are suffering, or people that are going through life without parole, and people that work on the death penalty to exonerate innocent inmates. So I think the issue of like finding lawyers would not be a thing, because plenty of people have the same mindset that I do, where it's like, hey, there are probably, well, for sure, there's innocent people that are in jail and in prison and serving life without parole sentences and serving on death row, and we need to find evidence for them to be exonerated, and that are plenty happy to work for free. I don't know. It's very, very uncomfortable to me, and I guess you could frame that like an emotional thing, but I think it makes sense that society writ large is fine with the death penalty, broadly speaking, because when people think of a heinous crime, they think, ooh, I don't like that. That person needs to be deleted. It seems like a barbaric way to have a justice system.
I don't think so. I mean, I really do think that you can look at situations, and universally it's pretty agreed on that there are things that somebody that just doesn't do. I mean, there's and
well, that's why we have prison, right? To segregate bad members of society. But why do we have to take the extra step of killing them?
I mean, part of it might be to just keep them away from other inmates. I mean, I would be totally horrified if I was locked up with, if you committed a robbery, killed somebody, get locked up for life, and I'm in there with people who like murdered their families and raped kids, and I mean, to me, it's just not even the same.
That's what prison is like, but like. So I don't think that that's a valid argument, because even though we have, like, prison is where we send the worst of the worst, especially like maximum security prisons.
Sure.
And so you're already going to be in there. Like people are going to be in there with Nicholas Cruz, who murdered his classmates, right? And of course, I imagine as he grows older, if he grows older, that people will be terrified of him, right? Especially if he like hits the gym equipment and he becomes like buff, which he's kind of a scrawny guy, what he looks like. But that isn't an argument for killing him, because otherwise we would just let people out and be like, you know what, you're right. We don't want to put you. That's why you have different types of prisons, right? You have low security and then maximum security, and probably several layers in between. I don't know. It just doesn't strike me as a legitimate reason to kill somebody.
So like Nicholas Cruz would be exactly what I'm talking about, where he targets a bunch of innocent people who literally are legally unable to defend themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
talking about specifically with firearms. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
No,
I mean, because there were people who fought back,
Mm-hmm.
and they had no chance.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think you can even really carry like certain knives and stuff like that into it, even legally, like dangerous weapons.
Yeah, you'd have to break a couple laws or rules to be able to take a pocket knife or something like that into the high school.
Yeah. But that would be where it comes back to every single person in that building had the right to self-defense, but were literally incapable of exercising that right.
Mm-hmm.
So Nicholas Cruz should have been dropped dead on that on site.
Yeah, sure.
Like we all agree.
By the way, to be hyper clear,
Yeah.
In accordance with my framework, if somebody did have a firearm at the time and did drop Nicholas Cruz like a bag of rocks, I'd be fine with it. I would have no problem at all,
Right.
because he was actively in the process of taking people's lives. He was an imminent threat to somebody's life.
Yeah.
As it stands, though, right now, I don't think that 12 random people from the state of Florida should have the right to elect to kill him now that he is no longer a threat.
I think that it's almost a virtue to be able to say, no, we're going to do to you what should have been done at the time. We're going to...
Do you operate under Hammurabi's code, like an eye for an eye whole thing?
No. I mean, there's...
But that's what that... You recognize that is what that is.
Yeah. So, okay, literally no. Like, I don't think that if you like pop somebody's eye out, that you should be held down in court. The like victim scoops your eye out. Like, that's not great to me. I don't think that that's a good way of running it.
But you couching the death penalty in terms of, well, you took somebody's life, so we're going to take yours.
Yeah, whenever you specifically target somebody that you know has no ability to do to you what you're doing to them, it's a huge issue to me, and I think that it's perfectly right to apply that retribution to them. To say, we're going to do to you what this person should have had the opportunity to do in the moment. And it separates it from normal cases of murder where, one person kills another grown, capable adult, that sort of thing.
So that person would not be eligible for the death penalty? If a grown adult kills another grown adult?
I think that maybe you could build in other qualifiers, but for sure, like in terms of like expanding what the death penalty could apply to.
Just your framework, just how you look at it.
I mean, man, it really have to be... there's a lot of like case by case stuff. If I had the opportunity to like sit down and just make like a Venn diagram, I bet I could do it.
It's funny. My Venn diagram would be a circle. Like nobody's eligible for the death penalty. It wouldn't happen.
That's fair, but I think mine's more fun.
I'm sure that yours is more fun because I see, this is the thing. I totally get why people like the death penalty. I totally get it, because I'm not like a fucking robot, Like whenever I look at cases of like serial child rape or like serial murderers, I don't like those people any more than anybody else does. I just think as a principled position, I don't think should have the right, even if you took it as a vote. I don't think that we as society should not only should do it, but should have the ability to do it. I think it's totally out of bounds. And again, I fall back on my I am going to be morally better than somebody who decided to murder his classmates, for instance, or do X, Y, and Z terrible thing. You might have been an awful person when you did whatever you did. I'm going to be morally better than you. I'm going to choose life. And it's funny because I see a lot of people who are pro-life rather than pro-choice take death penalty stances. And I know that you have the contributing factors of like terrible things, right? But if life is important, then somebody being alive is important, right? There's something that is worth protecting there. I see a huge link between those two positions, but for whatever reason, it's some of the most common, most dislinked positions that a very certain subject or subsect of society has.
There's a very easy line. It's innocence.
Yeah. No, I get it. Well, but some innocent people die or killed by the death penalty.
And some people, innocent people, are locked up in prison for life.
Yeah.
Without
That's the reason that I don't think that that's a legitimate argument, because unless the only way to convict somebody of the death penalty or of life without parole is solid, concrete video evidence, I don't think that that's a legitimate position to take. I think that there's a crack in that argument.
And we are, and I would agree with you. We're in an age where we can absolutely rely on video evidence and let the rest fall through the cracks. If we're just going off of accusations and witness testimony,
letting potential like serial killers out because we didn't have solid evidence.
No.
But that's what that
not
would
what I
lead
said.
to. No, I know, but that's what that might lead to. If you say, "Hey, we don't have all of the evidence that we have that the state has against you is basically what amounts to be." Oh my gosh, I can't remember the term. I literally just had it in my head. Not consequential. Shoot, what is that word?
Saying concrete?
No, it's like the opposite of concrete. Like we found.
Oh, I'm sorry, circumstantial?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was the word that I was trying to think of. All of the evidence that the state has against you is essentially circumstantial. But if a jury finds that this pile of circumstantial evidence is enough to eliminate all reasonable doubt, then they can convict you of life without parole, no problem. Right, but if we say, hey, you're not allowed to convict on the death penalty or life without parole without concrete evidence, then you can have some people that very clearly committed heinous crimes, but we don't have concrete evidence. You can allow those people to get out. That's what I'm saying that your argument could lead to.
So, but that's been a legal argument for forever that all convictions before any sort of primary evidence, video, and all that kind of stuff came out is that we have to rely on witness testimony, and it's been enough. I see no reason to
witness testimony. Even witness testimony is like bananas sometimes with how often you can find that somebody just lied.
But we have to have something in order to at least enforce most laws. But as far as death penalty goes, it eliminates the concern for killing innocent people. The rest of it we leave open. And then I like I said, I would have no issue offering a more streamlined process for somebody to present exonerating evidence for somebody locked up life without parole.
Yeah.
So
you and I could very easily pigeonhole this really, really quickly into what boils down to you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, you believe that the state should have the right, and even if that right is a democratic right where people have to vote for it, you believe that the state has the right and should exercise the right to kill people.
So ultimately, the ones carrying it out, but it's still on the basis of leaving it up to the 12 jurors to decide whether or not the person is guilty. I'm sorry, not guilty. Well, it is.
No, yeah, it's guilty.
It is up to that. But the extra step of deserving of the death penalty, because the person's going to prison no matter what. It's just an extra question. It's an extra box to check.
You know the phrase like democratic socialism, right? Right.
Yeah.
So does democratic socialism make socialism any more desirable?
No. Whenever somebody has committed an act that removes them from society, and especially when they know that what they're doing is illegal. And I mean, people aren't being put on death row for stuff that they aren't aware they're like doing wrong.
Yeah, people are. I am fully aware that people are conscious of the wrongness of their acts. Otherwise, you could plead insanity, right? Where you literally don't understand right and wrong. But regardless, like you don't. I think anyway. I don't think that gives you the right to kill them, even if they're fully cognizant of right and wrong, even if they're fully cognizant of what they did and all of that sort of thing. I don't think that that gives the state, and assisted by the people who are a very convenient scapegoat to say, hey, we didn't want to do it. The people wanted to do it. Regardless of whether or not the emotions of 12 random citizens who we have no test for other than, I guess, voir dire, if you want to qualify that as a test of intelligence. I don't want 12 what are essentially idiots voting for me to die. I think that is like bananas. I think it's crazy to put my life or somebody else's life, regardless of the acts that I may or may not have committed, to put my life in the hands of 12 random citizens is crazy to me. But I'm not saying that I would prefer the death penalty be that sentence be imposed solely by the state. I'm saying that shouldn't happen at all.
No, I yeah, that's fair. I see, and I really feel like the justice system should be a mesh between,
which is an oxymoron, by the way. I thought about that earlier. The justice system is absolutely an oxymoron. Well, I find that term laughable.
What we call the justice system.
Yeah. I won't fight you on that. It's just my opinion.
I gotcha. I think that it is a good blend of objective law and will of the people. Mm-hmm. Maybe 12 isn't enough. But there is a number that I would be.
You know what? I would be cool with the death penalty if we had as many people on the jury as needed to get at least one person to say no.
Okay, yeah.
So that de jure we have the death penalty, but de facto it's not a thing.
And then I want enough for the rest of them to be able to just like get rid of them without anybody else.
The way that you want it is you have one jury member deciding if somebody should die, and it's Charles Carlisle.
Yeah,
and you're just you're smashing death every time.
Based.
Yeah, based. I don't. Like I said, we could very easily pigeonhole this, but it's just something that for the longest time I have been virulently. It's like I said earlier, you could construe this as like it's an emotional position for me, but since I was like, I'm not even exaggerating, since I was in elementary school, I've been thinking like, man, the death penalty seems really messed up, regardless of the acts that some people may or may not have committed. It just seems barbaric. It is reminiscent of guillotines or galleys, that's what it is, galleys, right? Or gallows rather. Where we have such a low, the way that I think about it, we have such a low understanding of ethics or justice or morality. We think that, hey, the way to make things better is just to kill them. And by the way, I wish I could have found this study, but I was looking all day today and I could not find it. I found it like a week ago. But there's a study that I saw where victims of the families of victims have no reported sense of like justice after their family. The murderer has been killed, right? Has been executed.
I actually know exactly
they report
what you're talking about.
No sense of satisfaction, and like regardless of the morality of it, regardless of the pragmatic aspects of cost, right? Regardless of the time factor, where so many members of the victims' families have passed away due to natural causes, while the killer, ostensibly the killer, is waiting to be killed, right? All these different things. Regardless of all of that, what I think is the main point of the death penalty is like to bring closure to the victims' families. That's not even achieved.
See,
one of the main purposes of the death penalty.
I don't think that needs to be a factor, to be honest with
Really?
you. I think that it is truly the society making the decision at this point, because first of all, I mean, you want to get away from the raw emotional reaction of the family.
Okay.
That would be the primary purpose of putting, like, they don't leave it up to the family to make the final call.
Yeah, because they would select death penalty every single time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I think that would be interesting. I don't think that the study looked at the reaction of the family right after the verdict was delivered. I think it was after the whole process, because there's retrials and all sorts of panels that the victim's family has to go to. They have to constantly be on top of this and appear and state their case and explain why they uphold the death sentence and all that, and it's exhausting. I can completely understand why somebody would not find satisfaction by the time it's all done.
Yeah.
But in that initial moment that the verdict is being, or the sentence is being handed
Sure.
down, I'm sure that you would find a much higher percentage of people who find satisfaction from
Yes,
that.
and thank goodness we don't base all of our systems on very, very short in the moment feelings. I think human beings should be a little bit more advanced than our very short term emotions.
I agree. I'm just getting away from the whole like idea that
Sure.
families don't find satisfaction, because I think that they do. It's
They
just
might immediately, but
Right.
but even after the offender has been executed,
Mhm.
it's like it's not a oh thank God he's gone. It's like a, oh my God, finally we're done with this. But that's not a sense of satisfaction. It's almost like a sense of relief that they don't have to keep reliving the trauma of the incident that happened, whatever that incident may be. And if you just sentence them to life without parole, you get that same, I would imagine anyway, I don't have a study that shows this, but I would imagine you get that same sense of satisfaction of like, thank God he's never going to see the light of day again, that motherfucker.
I don't know. I mean, I can only go off of my own,
Sure.
like what I would
Or like
guess would be my.
This is what I love though. I love taking two people's intuitions
Yeah.
and just smashing them together and seeing what comes out. That's what I base a lot of my opinions off of, just my intuition. And if I run into facts or evidence to the contrary, I will pay attention to that till the cows come home, you know? But I base a lot of stuff off of my intuition, because more often than not, my intuition on not necessarily all the time on factual things, but on questions of ethics or morality, I think that most people are judging those questions based on our intuition. I think that's what a lot of ethics and morality is just your intuition, what
Sure.
your gut feeling is. So,
Yeah, I mean that's probably. Oh man, this is that. I'm not gonna. That could get into a whole other.
yeah. Do you disagree with that? Do you think a lot of morality is not based in broad intuition?
The way we apply it and interpret it, it absolutely is. But I
Okay.
do think that there's a certain level of objective morality. At a certain point. At a certain point, yeah.
Okay.
I know.
I
No, that's what I'm saying.
couldn't
This
disagree
could-
with you more
yeah.
on that.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. This is no, I'm not going to get into it.
Oh man, I would love to get into it.
I know.
No, we are not going on a
That's one of the
tangent.
topics I
I
was
will not
talking
allow it.
No, yeah, but okay, so this is the issue with like objective morality, right? This
my
is the issue
God.
with the idea of objective morality. Is you could pigeonhole in 30 seconds, right? Because it is just your intuition versus my intuition. So, but we don't different episode.
Very different
Please.
episode,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's something deeper to it, because we were going somewhere with that.
With what?
That applying the death penalty is based on mostly intuition rather than.
Yeah. Do you not think that's true?
I think that it's appropriate, to be honest with you.
So, okay, wait. So you're not disagreeing that it's based on our intuition, but you're saying that when we do that based on our intuition, it's right.
It's appropriate. Right? I mean, well, okay, so I think of right and wrong, again, there's an objective
Sure.
morality, like somewhere in the, like there's somewhere
Sure.
that there is an objective answer to that question.
Okay.
So right, no. But in terms of how we apply it, yes.
What do you mean?
So if we're going, so the whole point of society and civilization is that it's created by people,
Okay.
and we try to compensate for the flaws of people, but we also build in our own feelings towards things in how we build those societies. So if we find something reprehensible enough, or that it violates some sort of human right, or that it violates consent, anything like that, then we take action against it. And I think that it's perfectly fair to have some level of human element to it, if it's going to be a system designed by humans for humans. I understand there's not necessarily fairness all the time, but in terms of death penalty, I just see no issue with the idea of putting a guilty person to death when society agrees with it. Obviously, there's an issue with putting innocent people to death,
Sure.
but I think that there are ways we can filter that out to the absolute utmost degree. That, I mean, if we require primary evidence proving that they were there, we can reasonably say that there's not going to be additional evidence that would
that would like go against that.
right.
Yeah. I totally, not to bring in a different argument at like the bottom of the ninth.
Sure.
What do you take any umbrage with the fact that the death penalty has been proven to be biased against poor people and minorities? Do you take any umbrage with that at all? Does that factor into your stance?
So I think, first of all, poor people are just more.
We should just kill 'em anyway.
That is the
No,
most
no, no.
base thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, right.
So
Especially from me. No. So okay, but even when you control for, yeah, I completely agree. Poor people are more likely to. Yeah, you suck. No, I agree that poor people, it's a statistical fact that poor people are more likely to commit certain crimes. But even when you control for that, poor people are significantly more likely of the same, even when wealthy people commit the same crimes, they're significantly more likely to receive the death penalty, not only because wealthy people are perceived to be better, but also because they can afford better lawyers. So how do you control for that, if you can even?
I don't know that you really can. You'd have the same disparity whenever it comes to any sort of level of justice.
Yeah, but the death penalty is permanent. It's forever.
Well, yeah, but if you're in a situation where you're locked up for life, then your resources are as limited anyways.
Yeah, but you have the assets that you went into prison with. Well, I guess your estate.
Zero. Which would be zero.
No, I'm saying if you're a wealthy person and you're going into jail, your estate, you still have assets that you can use to acquire better lawyers. Right, and petition the court to do X, Y, and Z. But if you're poor, you don't have those things.
Right, but what I'm saying is that disparity exists at every level anyways.
Yes, but my point is that disparity matters a lot less whenever you're just going to live out the rest of your days. Because you do have groups that can do pro bono lawyers that can do pro bono work on your behalf for filing motions, finding evidence, that sort of thing. But my point with that is that at a vastly higher rate, poor people and minorities, particularly black people, are executed more so than rich white people.
So really, the way that I see that is that you have a whole group of people, rich, poor, who normally would be sentenced to death, and then a bunch of rich people have really good lawyers that get them out of that. So the pool of people who are being sentenced to death is only being restricted rather than expanded to it's not more likely that a poor person is going to be sentenced to death. It's just less likely that a rich person is going to be. And I have no issue with people who might deserve the death penalty not being given the death penalty. But I don't think that more poor people are being sentenced to death because they're poor. I think they would be sentenced to death, just they don't have the lawyer to get them out of it. You see what I'm saying?
So you don't see anything wrong with that?
I don't see that as losing the $5. I see that as you have $5 that you could get and then you lose it. So the rich people would have gotten the death penalty, but then they got a good lawyer and got out of it.
Because they're rich.
Sure.
Okay. And that's fine for you, that rich people have a different sort of get out of jail free card. That poor people don't have.
They have the same, like I said, they have the same card at every level. I just don't think that I don't think that the consequences any different whenever it comes to death penalty. Like what you were saying, that it's a much greater consequence whenever you're talking about death penalty. No, they would have gotten the death penalty, but for the fact that they had a good lawyer. So the poor people aren't getting sentenced to death because they're poor. They're just getting sentenced to death because they don't have the better lawyer. You see what I'm saying? They're not.
It's fine.
You have. They're going to prison. They're going to death row.
Yeah.
And then some of them get a really good lawyer and get out of it.
Sure.
Other people deserved death row.
Okay.
I have no issue saying that they
I don't
deserve
think anybody
death row.
deserves to be killed, but
I think that if they're on death row, generally they deserved it.
sure.
Um,
Okay, so how does this argument hold for black people and other minorities?
because they still committed an act that has been determined to be deserving of death.
Yes, but more white people who committed the same crimes and have gotten the same sentence get out of death row than black people do. I want to say it's like a three times more white people, and not just nominally, like in terms of a percentage. 3 times more white people get off of both life without parole and the death penalty than black people and other minorities.
And that's accounted for economic status?
Good question. I don't know.
That would be the...
Yeah, but I don't think that the economic status would matter that much. It might contribute to, I don't know, not very much, I don't think. But I think broadly speaking, I'm sorry, it's not only that they get out, but it's that the juries don't give them the death penalty. Broadly speaking, when juries look at white suspects or defendants, and they look at black suspects, they will condemn the black or minority suspect to the death penalty significantly more than they will
I have a
condemn
quick question, actually.
white suspects, white defendants.
I have a quick question.
What's your fucking question?
Wow, Jonathan, that's rather rude of you.
You're right.
No, so, isn't one of the factors an individual's criminal history?
Not when we're determining.
I just want to know.
Okay, number one, I don't believe that matters whenever we're talking about murder.
Mm-hmm.
So, whenever we're talking about first degree murder, because
either way, that's like the worst crime other than raping.
Yeah, so like if you committed robbery the first time, right, versus somebody who committed robbery for the 10th time.
Right.
The person who committed robbery for the 10th time is probably going to be sentenced to longer sentences.
I just had no idea if that was ever a factor in like the big boy cases.
I don't believe it is whenever the justice system is determining the consequence of your actions.
Okay.
Right? Where it's like, hey, regardless of whether or not you've done X, Y, and Z and then you murdered somebody, or it's like just you pre-planned and murdered somebody, I believe, generally speaking, the consequences are basically the same, controlling for all other factors.
Cool. I mean, please continue. I just wanted to ask.
We will continue. Thanks.
Damn.
No. So yeah, how do you how do you square that when white people are given the death penalty at lower rates than other minorities? Potentially controlling for wealth disparities.
Potentially. Well, that's
Again,
a big...
I know it's a big potentially, but I'm sure that I could find something that says as much.
I could even be comfortable with saying that people probably have that sort of bias. But first of all, that's an issue that exists at every level. The crime hasn't changed really. I mean, this is where it's weird, man, because I mean, you're also going, like, is this done on like a statewide level, national level?
These studies?
Because the death penalty is applied on county level, like district level cases. So like you have
what?
So like Texas is split into a bunch of different judicial districts that preside over felony cases where like death penalty might be applied and that sort of thing. So you have concentrated communities who might feel more strongly about certain cases and who might just have a lack of comparable or comparable cases. So if you have a county where you have a relatively low murder rate and then somebody commits a super heinous crime, it's going to impact that jury's decision way more heavily than an area where you have a lot of that crime,
like Chicago or something.
Chicago, yeah.
Okay.
Which, I mean, that kind of like obviously the argument there would be that if you have a lot of black people committing the same crime, that you're going to have a relatively lower amount of death row convictions for that. But I think that there's still that sort of influence that, like Harris County down in
Yeah.
Houston is in, has one of the highest death row sentencings.
Which is not a surprise because Houston sucks.
it's the armpit of Texas.
It
We all
sucks.
agree. That's
Yeah.
something. In fact,
I would have said it's the asshole of
if
Texas.
there's one
but-
place that death penalty should be applied to, it's probably Houston.
Oh, I thought you were going to say black people.
Okay. I think that's also like seriously. I think that's a huge factor. So in a
Geography?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Especially if you have certain I'm not going to argue there might be areas where you have
Racism?
more racial
Racism?
yeah, more racism, sure, in that area.
It's
and
bad.
so like some areas you might have a situation
Mm-hmm.
where the majority of people being sentenced to death row are black people because
Mm-hmm.
that area is just more predisposed to it. Of course, there's an issue, but you can also, I mean, I think that that's perfectly justifiable for grounds to relocate the trial to another area. So you can request that.
How do you do it? How do you do it when racism is prevalent throughout the entire state?
Through the state? I don't think that you're gonna find that in every state.
You know that the South exists, right?
yeah, and
Okay.
you know that there's a lot of other Texas has plenty of areas where you can
Of
find,
racism?
It has plenty of areas of racism, but it has plenty of areas of places where you're not going to find that same sort of bias. So if you can make a motion, like
Do you mean exclusively pretty much major metropolitan areas?
it's probably more the case in Texas, but you can find areas. I mean, North Dallas and more of the suburbs. You're going to be just fine, I
Sure.
think. So that's one of those cases that I think could be considered, and I'm sure that it should be considered whenever, like after the sentence is passed down, and you're going through all the appeals and all that kind of stuff.
So something like a disparity in terms of racial outcomes for the death penalty, you think or hope, I guess, would be caught during the appeals process?
Absolutely. I mean, if you can find evidence that a jury was already predisposed to a certain outcome,
How do you find evidence for that?
you could do all sorts of research into jury members if they've done any sort of public activism, go through certain social media, if they've expressed any sort of views on the case beforehand that they didn't expose.
Yeah, but you can't like minority report somebody where you're like looking into their head and you're figuring out what they're thinking.
No, but I mean that's right. Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of the limitation of the system,
Like Michael, you wouldn't think likes black people,
right?
but actually his number one search term is ebony. Ebony men, which I think is
Actually,
interesting.
he came down with jungle fever. I think.
I wasn't going to
What?
use that term. Jesus Christ.
What did I miss? I was asking for more beer, and then this happens.
I think we're a little pigeonholed.
Probably.
Probably.
Well, it's just this is why I don't like the whole idea of, because this is like constantly thrown out that like black people are convicted more based for like equivalent crimes and all that, and then you look deeper and they had more criminal history. They came from
Yes, but again, I don't think that the criminal history weighs as much in death penalty cases. I don't think it's as much of a factor. And I think even when you control for criminal histories, they're still convicted of the death penalty at significantly higher rates.
that. I mean that could be. I guess I need to see what
So I have another
the
question.
study is based
I
on.
don't care. So like I was saying, no, I'm kidding. What's up?
Oh my goodness
I'm
gracious!
kidding. I love you. I
God.
love you, Michael.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Oh, thank you for the beer.
Please make him as drunk as possible.
Well, we'll get there.
You got a lot of body fat, so because it's gonna take a lot.
Yeah, I'm like the weight of 2 mountains.
Yeah, but the 2 mountains are just on your
Just
chest.
as
Yeah.
hard.
Wow, nice. That was a penis joke. Good job. What's your question? I'm so sorry.
No. So I know that you're saying that the percentage of oh, wow.
You're welcome.
So basically, there's a larger percentage of black individuals who are who are given the death penalty than white individuals?
Generally, it's black men. Actually, funnily enough, black women are given the death penalty at lower rates than white men for similar crimes.
Yeah, you can't hold women accountable.
True. True.
Based.
Yes. Sorry. What?
So what's like the sheer number, if that makes sense?
The
Like,
nominal value? I don't know how much nominal values actually matter.
well, it kind of does
It
because
doesn't, because we're talking about percentages and disparities, and whenever we're talking about nominal amounts, per capita matters way more than the nominal amount. But what were you saying?
well, I mean, doesn't it matter if like what was the total amount of white individuals who are convicted of a murder case versus the total amount of black individuals who are convicted of a murder case?
Yeah, but again, the population size is. That's why people talk about per capita. Right? So white people murder white people nominally at significant. I was about to say at a significantly higher
there's a
rate.
large black on black like
No, I know, but even if you look at those numbers, the black on black murder nominally, the murder value is significantly lower than the white on white murder value. Again, strictly nominally speaking. But when you look at murder rates and per capita rates, that's when you see the disparity.
I mean, how equivalent do because conviction of like a death row sentence is relatively low compared to
It's significantly rare
Right.
whenever you look at sentencing, but
so-
but the disparities still matter.
well, yeah, but whenever you're talking about like that low of a sample size, how many of these cases are really that equivalent to each other that are being?
You can control for quite a few factors. You can.
I mean, no. Whenever like the amount of evidence that's required in cases where the death sentence is being pursued, you have like everything thrown in, like way higher levels of evidence than would typically be included in any other sentencing potential. So I don't know. I mean, I could imagine a situation where you actually would have way more differences brought out in a death sentence trial than you would in most other circumstances. I don't think that you're going to find many one-to-one comparisons.
I died a little.
Good.
All right.
I hope you die a lot.
Anyways, you have your minute.
I don't think that the benefits, of which I will acknowledge, of the emotional aspect, which of society, not even the victim's family, broadly speaking, but of society being able to feel good about itself, I don't think that the benefits of the death penalty even come close to outweighing the costs, sometimes literal and sometimes of our own moral character as a society. I don't think that it's good for society to indulge itself, and especially if the medium of the indulgence is in reveling in the death of another human being, even if they are terrible, terrible people. I think that we are bearing a moral cost for that, and I don't think that it's a moral cost that we can measure, but it's something that we can definitely see in how society degrades over time and revels in the death of one another. I think that is a significantly high cost for society to bear over generations. I think it's really bad, and I don't think that we can for much longer.
Well, Mikey, now it's your turn.
So I absolutely think that the penalty of death being baked into a justice system is completely appropriate for any human society. We form the justice system around a mixture of morality and objectivism, and I think that applying even extreme moral measures to punish people for certain crimes is sometimes necessary, sometimes appropriate, and as far as something that isn't sustainable, it's sustained through all of human society. I don't think that there's any question that we've made it work as far as it persisting through time. So it's jumped from civilization to civilization, but
the quantity. Oh, I hate that. I'm so sorry.
the quantity has lowered.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So we've had to lower it to, I guess, kind of adjust with society. Do you not think that it'll lower and lower and lower to zero?
If we can find a way
Do you not
to
think that is the right way to go about it? If the death penalty nominally has gone down so much over time, why would 0 not be the best number?
So generally, I would like to trend towards rehabilitation in a broad sense across the justice system.
Well,
and
you
I think
can't
that as
rehabilitate a corpse, Charles.
Well, gentlemen,
yeah.
we do need a wrap up. I will say,
Man, I was
guys,
about
we
to
can have a
win.
part 2 though. Which now, So let me just say that honestly, guys, I was actually profoundly impressed with this. Honestly, we didn't need me at all. I was just kind of fucking here. This was not my idea, by the way.
The microphones limited our volume.
Look, it was not my idea to sit here and
Unnatural.
moderate. I thought they would be fine just on their own. Liam and Jacob thought it would just be a shouting match. So I'm profoundly impressed that you both proved them wrong. So the next time we do this, because I would love for you guys to chat again. I don't think I'm needed in this seat, but just shut up, Liam. You're not in the shot.
Jesus.
Add a little bit more energy to it.
Shut up, Liam.
If we got into an argument where I was like significantly more morally convicted about what I'm talking about, and I viewed it as a significantly more important subject, we could probably get into a shouting match. But I think with the knowledge that we're on camera, we're sort of encouraged to be calm.
Yeah, like if you fucked my wife, we.
What?
Oh, she hasn't told you?
What?
No, actually, she's been, I don't know, like
A little
maybe
more
that's why she's
uninterested.
been so disgusted.
Okay,
lately. I don't know.
let's go ahead and wrap this
Ashamed-
up.
ashamed?
For the love of God, I have work tomorrow. I'm tired, but thank you for watching this special episode. It's a low effort one, but honestly, I feel like I felt the incredible amount of effort you both put into this incredible debate. I'm signing off.